Admiral James Stavridis was 16th Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and 12th Dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. He spent the bulk of his operational career in the Pacific, including multiple command assignments for the past 2 decades. China's strategy in the South China Sea has been reminiscent of ancient general and strategist Sun Tzu, who said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. In this turbulent time, that patience is beginning to change as China, emboldened by the US's abdication of leadership and by a distracted world, gains in aggression. Most recently, China has been using its naval forces to pressure the littoral nations, especially Vietnam and the Philippines. A month ago, China sank a Vietnamese fishing vessel, a maneuver that was roundly condemned by the international community. China is increasing its push against U.S. warships, using aggressive signaling, dangerously close maneuvering, illuminating U.S. ships with fire control radar, which suggests the imminent launch of weapons, and overflying at very close range. Given China's relatively successful containment of coronavirus and fast moves to restart its economy, the Chinese are probably in a position to offer economic and soft power incentives to those states around the periphery of the South China Sea. So what can we deduce from all of this about China's new strategy for consolidating control here? China claims almost the entire sea, from its coastline out to the 9-dashed line it has drawn on the map, as territorial waters. This has enormous international implications because of the oil, natural gas and merchant trade in the region. It has steadfastly maintained its claims despite losing an arbitration in an international court and facing pushback from littoral nations, notably Vietnam and the Philippines. The U.S. has mounted a campaign of freedom of navigation patrols to challenge China's presumption of sovereignty and its construction of artificial islands throughout the contested waters. But China has been aggressively expanding its fleet of ocean-going warships, increasing its stock of hypersonic carrier-killer cruise missiles and improving its undersea technology. All of this gives it more confidence in responding to the U.S. patrols. The strategy is also becoming more aggressive because of China's internal political concerns. As President Xi Jinping attempts to consolidate his power, he needs to keep the growing middle class content, but a slowing economy means another rallying cry is necessary. That may well manifest itself in a more nationalistic tone about the South China Sea for the rest of the world. The choices are difficult. No one wants to stumble into a full-blown Cold War, or indeed a shooting war, with China. But avoiding this while resisting China's sweeping claims in the South China Sea will require finely tuned economic and diplomatic pressure and military deterrence as well. That means the U.S. should seek to align the diplomatic condemnation by all the nations of the South China Sea plus Japan, India and Australia on the military side. More freedom of navigation patrols by not only the US but other allies will be required, including leading NATO nations like the UK and France, for example. Another part of the strategy must include economic components of both inducements and sanctions if dangerous behavior continues. Finally, part of this confrontation will occur in the cyber world, and here strong defenses will be necessary as China will likely use the venue to make its displeasure known. Sun Tzu was a strong advocate for patient victory, but he also said that opportunities multiply as they are seized. Beijing seems to be doing just that in the South China Sea. The US Navy has warned China poses a serious threat to the future of international sea travel as tensions threaten to boil over in the disputed South China Sea. The US Navy has issued a stern response to China after Beijing accused Washington of violating international laws during a routine freedom of navigation operation. Senior Colonel Li Huimin, A spokesman for the Chinese People's Liberation Army Southern Theater Command said sea and air units were deployed to warn off US vessels from the region. Colonel Lee claims a U.S. ship had illegally ventured near to the China-occupied Paracel Islands, something Washington has denied in a fiercely worded statement. Colonel Lee said, "The provocative actions by the U.S. have seriously undermined China's sovereignty and security interests, seriously violated international laws and regulations, and severely damaged the peace and stability of the region." U.S. Navy Lieutenant Junior Grade Rachel Maul disputes China's version of events and said the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer asserted navigational rights and freedoms in the Paracel Islands. Consistent with international law, the U.S. insists it is the actions of China that is threatening peace in the disputed region. Lieutenant Maul said, "This freedom of navigation operation, FONIP, upheld the rights, freedoms, and lawful uses of the sea recognized in international law by challenging the restrictions on innocent passage imposed by China, Taiwan, and Vietnam, and also by challenging China's claim to straight baselines enclosing the Paracel Islands." Unlawful and sweeping maritime claims in the South China Sea pose a serious threat to the freedom of the seas, including the freedom of navigation and overflight and the right of innocent passage of all ships. The U.S. regularly conducts freedom of navigation operations in line with the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Just last month, 2 US-flagged vessels have sailed through the contested Spratly Islands as part of scheduled operations. The USS Berry guided missile destroyer traveled near the disputed Paracel Islands. This was followed 24 hours later by the USS Bunker Hill aircraft carrier. China's Shanxi City has established control over the Paracel Islands and the Spratly Islands, 2 disputed archipelagos in the South China Sea. Beijing has also established military outposts on the artificial island. China's sovereignty over the South China Sea is disputed by claims from neighboring Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. Under international law, a large part of the South China Sea comes under Vietnamese sovereignty. However, Beijing disagrees and says that the entire waterway up to the coasts of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Taiwan belongs to China, a claim rejected by an international court of arbitration in 2016. The contested South China Sea is also one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world and is crucial to global trade. A 2015 US Department of Defense report found an estimated $5.3 trillion, £4 million, worth of goods are shuttled through the waterways every year.